Kavanaugh. He's been a very able witness. Sometimes I think he has answered in a scholarly fashion. Sometimes I think he has kind of muddied an issue up and complicated it enough that it just loses its edge. But I would have to say I was a little bit surprised, particularly by Sheldon Whitehouse, who in that initial burst was talking about, well, you know, yesterday morning was talking about the outrage of this hearing and sounded very aggressive and went down a lot of rabbit holes that I got to say I couldn't follow him, and my guess is most of the viewers couldn't follow him. I thought Pat Leahy and Dick Durbin did a pretty good job in the sense that they were pursuing specific issues, inconsistencies in the testimony, or they perceived as inconsistencies in the testimony of Brett Kavanaugh when he was going for his Circuit Court of Appeals job about 10, 12 years ago, and what he has said now, or records that they have gotten since then. But they didn't really score many points on him, and as I say, I thought Sheldon Whitehouse, I still don't quite understand. I guess what I'd have to say, that was a half an hour I'm never going to get back.
I keep thinking back to the Bork nomination for the simple reason that that was the last time opponents of the nominee were able to use the hearings effectively to basically blow up the nomination. And what was done to Bork and in the Bork hearings was unfair. It was character assassination. It was outrageous in many ways, but it was successful. And I think that the people who manage these nominees now, from Republican candidates, nominees from Republican presidents, have learned a lot about how to deal with these hearings. And when you heard Kavanaugh saying, as he did, talking about the parties to the case, that they're flesh and blood human beings and we need to have empathy for them, and that the real world consequences of the decisions of the court are very important. As a political matter, that's great stuff. As a legal matter, it's nonsense. In fact, the matter is, when you're an appellate judge and an issue comes before you, your concern is not particularly the parties. Your job is to resolve the legal issues. It is almost a purely legal matter. And the parties may just happen to be the case they pick to do that. Now, obviously, it's well as a human being to say you care about the parties. Yes, you should. But that's smart to say that. Bork said, when he was asked about why he wanted to be on the court back then, he said, among other things, prominently, he said it was an intellectual feast. Well, his critics got all over that, saying, you know, to him it's a purely theoretical matter, and it's all these people are just writing on a page, and they're not, you know, names on a page are not real people, and so forth. Politically, that's a very unappealing answer, and it hurt his cause. It's pretty clear that Kavanaugh is aware of that lesson and has learned it.
You need to add humanizing flourishes in order to be palatable to both sides and yet still maintain that judicial neutrality, which is the point that he's hammered home. AB, you know, as a point of politics, when we saw the president moments ago, he said he watched and felt that at this point Democrats are grasping at straws. Do you agree?
I do, but as we've been commenting throughout the day, we haven't really seen the big firecracker Democrats who are trying to run for president in a few years. They're coming later in the day, and I expect them to make more of a show than the senators on the Democratic side that we've heard from today. I do think the argument about disclosure still stings, and I thought Durbin was effective. You know, the Democrats are trying to shame Brett Kavanaugh about the fact that so much of it has been protected under executive privilege. And wouldn't he want to have all this revealed? Wouldn't it make him more comfortable? And made him uncomfortable to answer the question. And that's a theme I think we'll continue to hear. I think even though we haven't gotten to the most fiery questioning yet, what the takeaway is from the critics of Brett Kavanaugh is so far is that he will not respond on how he would respond as a Supreme Court justice to a self-pardon by president. He has not responded. He would not respond to how he would rule on a subpoena to a president. And he would not say that he would back the constitutionality of coverage for pre-existing conditions. Those are the bottom lines, no matter how dull the questioning has been from Democrats today. Those are the takeaways they came with today, and that's what you're going to hear about in the midterm campaign.
So after the break, we've got Senator Klobuchar from Minnesota, and then Senator Cruz from Texas, Senator Coons from Delaware, Senator Sass, in that order. 12 senators to go. Shannon Bream is up on the perch overlooking the committee. Shannon, we've seen a lot of protests still. It's continued pretty regularly throughout. And is this an orchestrated deal that you see that is spread out over the committee here?
You know what? Yesterday, I actually heard from somebody who waited in line with the public, like anyone else, to try to get their minute or two in the room. They let them sit down just below where we are in the skybox. And this person told me, I did not see it for myself, there are now increasing reports about the fact that there's money changing hands between some people in the line and people who we then track and see in here who are actually protesting. So I haven't seen it myself. We heard that story from somebody who was in line yesterday and said they witnessed it. We see things that are coming up on social media that claim the same. So it's hard to tell, but we have seen, it appears, repeat people that we've seen protesting before yesterday back in here today. So although they are swiftly removed. Yeah, they're quickly removed, but a lot of people, it seems like, are finding a way to cycle back in. So it does continue today. It punctuates things at sometimes the oddest moments. There was a moment where Judge Kavanaugh was talking about the fact that he wants to, if he's lucky enough to be confirmed, he wants to be somebody that is viewed as completely neutral and representing all Americans, regardless of class or background or who they are or where they come from. He wants them always to feel like they've been fairly treated, whether on the losing or winning end of a case that he's decided. And just as he was starting to talk about some of that, treating all Americans fairly and gaining their confidence and restoring their confidence in the Supreme Court as an apolitical body, another protest erupted. So it's definitely continued through some of the very important points today. And guys, if you're wondering, Federalist 10 isn't bad. It's about the Electoral College.
We knew you'd have a favorite, Shannon. Let's bring Juan back into the mix. Juan, as was mentioned, we are waiting for some of the sort of most vociferous critics of Brett Kavanaugh to come up, and two of them, Cory Booker and Kamala Harris, are likely runs in 2020. So no doubt they'll try to put down some markers that that might propel that for them in the future.
Well, I think the whole issue for them will be the integrity of the court with Judge Kavanaugh as the swing vote in the Kennedy seat. You know, it's interesting to me, and just watching the Democrat strategy throughout the day, Martha, I think clearly this morning the effort by Senator Leahy was really about whether or not you can be trusted. And Leahy was saying, you were using stolen documents or suggesting as such. Kavanaugh said he didn't know that those documents were stolen or taken wrongly from the committee. And then this afternoon, you listen to Sheldon Whitehouse, the senator from Rhode Island, and he's talking about dark money. And again, dark money being behind the Federalist Society and other organizations that have been putting conservative judges on the court. So in both cases, I get the sense they think they are not stopping the nomination, but they are raising questions both about the integrity of the nominee and whether or not there's a shadow or dark money hand behind him, pushing him on President Trump even, and secondly about the court, again, being influenced by money in terms of which cases come before it and whether the court is being pushed in a direction that's not in keeping with the true interest of the American people.
All right, Judge, favorite Federalist paper?
I'll take Madison on why we have a government because men are not angels. Look, there are three audiences here. One is Senator Paul, Senator Murkowski, and Senator Collins. I don't think they've done anything. I haven't laid a glove on Judge Kavanaugh yet sufficient to pry loose those three. The second is the general public, and I'm with Chris Wallace. I had to have toothpicks keep my eyes open during Senator Whitehouse, who I thought was going to be aggressive. He practically put everybody to sleep. The third audience is the hard left of the Democratic base. I don't even think that the Democrats on this committee have served that audience. No one has laid a glove on Judge Kavanaugh. He is not only coming off as brilliant, he's coming off as human and warm and likable and the inevitable next justice on the court.
Is Dana? Do we have Dana in New York still? Mm-hmm. Dana, let's go to you. As you watch this play out this afternoon, one of the things that strikes me is the fact that, as Senator Grassley brought up earlier today, a lot of these complaints, and when you think about Whitehouse and you think about Leahy, that neither one of them availed themselves of the opportunity to look at these confidential documents when they had the opportunity. The only one who did was Klobuchar, and yet they're still complaining about not having access to all the documents.
And in fact, at one point, Senator Leahy had to concede that actually Brett Kavanaugh had not actually sent any of the emails. He wasn't even on the one email that he was looking at that, and I think that it was a clever ploy to try to get back around to the complaint that there aren't enough documents, but I don't think it made the sale. Brett Kavanaugh today, I think that he has been extremely compelling. As my colleagues have said, they haven't laid a glove on him, and it really has separated the true legal scholars of America who understand our Constitution from those of us who watch legal dramas on TV and think we know what we're talking about. And I think the judge is getting a kick out of that one, but it really is amazing when he starts quoting from the Federalist Papers. We've been having like almost a bingo game here for which one he's going to come up with next. I think with the Democrats, one of the things that they are doing is, at least for the Democrats so far, and you're right, stay tuned because there's going to be a lot of fireworks when these next younger Democrats get up to question Kavanaugh. But I believe that they are moving to try to influence Kavanaugh instead of trying to block him. And you saw that with Senator Whitehouse saying to Kavanaugh, when you get there, could you make sure you check in on this amicus brief issue because it's a really big concern to me? And Kavanaugh says, absolutely, I'd be happy to do that for you. The last thing on the protesters, I would say, there's a law of diminishing returns. When you have someone talking about the importance of our Constitution, how our founding fathers thought about separating the branches of government, and then you have incoherent, impossible to hear screams from the background that interrupt it, I really think that it's hurting their cause.
All right, panel, stand by if you would, just to give you all a sense of our programming here. We're going to take a quick 1-minute break as you get
theirs that we're not able to see and asserted a privilege that's never happened before in a Supreme Court nomination hearing. Is there anything in those documents or in the staff secretary documents that you think we'd like to know that's relevant to some of the